I found 7,000 forgotten photos, and they answered the one question I was afraid to ask about the next 20 years. This is a good story. I always find these ones good. 20 years ago, two guys in dress shirts were wandering the basement of a Catholic church looking for trouble. And I know that sounds weird. That was me and John. And we were just, that's the shot, the picture, if you've seen the picture in the caption. We were at our wedding party, or we were part of a wedding party for my buddy Rob, who's being married, who was nowhere near to be found for this, let's just say, beginning of a wedding. Our buddy Rob, and being on time had not been one of the most important things for him. But anyways, the three of us, when we were young, were inseparable. Since we were literally like 5 years old, we grew up together, came of age together, and did what life does to everybody. Eventually, we scattered. By the time Rob was finally trying to get the knot tied today, or during this photograph, if you see, it had been close to a decade since the three of us had been together in the same room. So when John and I showed up early and found ourselves standing in this enormous Catholic church with nothing but florists and silence around us, florists that is, we did what any two guys would do, with not much history of being very well supervised. We started exploring. The place was massive, a real cathedral of a building, all stone and echoing hallways. We wound our way down through the whole thing until we ended somewhere in this lower level, some kind of kitchen or something, storage area. And sitting there in the cool, quiet back were a couple of large jugs of wine. I looked at John, and John looked at me, and I said, well, the reasonable man would say in that moment, I said, when in Rome. By the time the wedding party arrived about an hour later, just John and I were pretty well generously in a celebratory type of mindset. That was 20 years ago. It's amazing. I was sitting here recently looking at these photographs from 2006 or wherever it was, exactly the day, because I figured out how to pull these 7,000 pictures off this old hard drive that had been collecting dust on my shelf. 7,000 pictures, decades worth of pictures that when they all started loading up, it was like being hit by a wave you didn't see coming. There I was, 20 years younger, standing at a wedding party in a church basement with wine in my breath and a grin on my face without a single clue about what was next. 20 years were going to go by pretty quickly, and that's gotten handed to me. When I look back at those pictures, there's always that same feeling that creeps in. What was I thinking? Where did I think I was going? What was I actually believing in at that point? What was waiting for me out there? Back there, I was grinding away at some corporate job, doing 9 to 5 warrior, and that was kind of going on. I thought I was a real estate mogul back then. I had a bunch of houses. It seemed simple enough at the time. Houses were cheap. We were buying them up, renting them out, and I figured that was the play. What did I know? What did I not know? I figured it was absolute avalanche of easy peasy money. Boy, did I not know what headaches were on my way. Managing tenants is something else. It produced some profitability, that's for sure, but it also produced a level of aggravation that no spreadsheet ever captures when you're running in the numbers in your head. Eventually, I learned, though, that the return is not really worth the effort, and I let that chapter close. But here's the thing about those pictures that gets me. Not a single one of them, not a single one staring back at me have any idea what's coming. My little brain has no idea that his little band that he has is fooling around and is eventually going to share a stage with heroes that I grew up with listening to. He does not know that a concept of owning a business, which is so frequently talked about today as an entrepreneurship, hustle culture, doesn't even exist. Not even a fathom of thought process of having a business. The 5 houses that I'll come to buy and sell, the 2 children I'll have, the whole change in the attitude of the architecture of things that I am. I don't know that. I just know there's a jug of wine, and I'm happy that we're in the church basement pounding wine before we go upstairs to have to deal with this wedding. That's the strange thing. It's the mercy of not knowing. Now I sit here and the math and looking at the math on the other side is a lot different today. And it puts me somewhere close to 20 years from now being 80 years old. Lord knows, let me tell you, when you write that number down and really look at it, holy crap, something shifts. It's not panic. No, it's not panic. It's more like a flare going off, a signal reminding the clock is real and it's ticking and the game is not over, but the quarter's at the end. I'm at the last quarter here. I'm either going to make it or not make it over the next couple of decades as something that's entertainment. I wasn't built for being on a beach either. I'm not a retirement fantasy guy. I don't need to live with some golf cart and go off and play golf every day. I hate that crap. I'm not going to sit in a chair and look at the ocean. I just can't do it. I tried. I don't have any interest. I like the ocean, but I wasn't sat or I wasn't meant to be sat down and quietly just sit there and be sedimentary staring at a phone. The question actually keeps me up at night. A better one is, how do I wind down? How do I wind down where I evolve? Because looking back 20 years means something forward 20 years at the exact same time, at the same pace. It's almost like a mirror, right? The guy in those photographs could not have drawn the map what was coming, but something in him was already leaning towards it. The band, the business, the building of something real, it's all quietly gestating in those early years as he thought he was just paying a mortgage and showing up for a few practices. So I ask you plainly, what's worth conquering now? What is the game worth still playing? What would be the version of me or you that exists in 20 years from now that we wish that we want to be? That version sitting here right now that you want to get done. Because this window, this particular slice of time, is not a waiting room. It's the main event, especially for people in my age bracket. The lesson learned here is that the old pictures on that hard drive were not just nostalgia. They're a mirror held up at an angle showing what I am and where I've been. But it's also showing me a trajectory I could take. Now, every 20-year chapter contains the seeds of the next one, planted quietly in the years you thought were just surviving, or celebrating, or wandering through a church basement with a jug of wine. The danger is not getting older. The danger is treating time like it's just something ahead, as if it's just something in the rearview mirror that's still out there. The question is never what is left. The question is always what is next. And the only wrong answer is assuming there is not one. Do you ever sit down with old photographs and try and reverse engineer the life you were building before you even knew where you were building it to? What did that version of you from 20 years ago have? Absolutely a question of what could happen. What is it that's coming? What do you want to make out of yourself? This is a really big question. It comes down to the lesson being learned about don't necessarily think about what you see in the past is an answer to your future, meaning you can't derive what you're going to do in 20 years. But the one thing you can do is think about how remarkable you could be in 20 years. If you have absolutely no idea where you want to go because you're not planning it, nothing really will happen except for fate. But if you have a great idea that it could take a decade to get to, why not start planning that to get to now? Because things typically take 2 times the amount of time you expect. So 20 years from now, where will you be? What will you want to have accomplished? And who are you? It will help you along the path to think about that now instead of later.